all, and welcome back to There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani, and this week I'm going to be covering a case out of Indiana really quickly. It's probably not going to be a long episode, but bear with me. All right. Burger Chef was founded in Indiana in 1954, geared towards families and children. They had the first Happy Meal and cartoon commercials. By the 1970s, there were over 1,000 locations across the U.S. Then, in 1978, in Speedway, Indiana, a murder of 4 teenagers in the woods next to a burger chef occurred. At this time, while it was a small town feel, the criminal elements were growing. On Friday, November 17th, 1978, again, Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, was scheduled to have 4 employees there until closing. 20-year-old Jane Freet was the manager, along with Ruth Shelton, who was 17, Danny Davis, 16, and Mark Flemons, 16. Mark had happened to switch a shift with a coworker so she could go on a date with Brian Crane, both employees of the shop. Typically, they tended to lock the doors around 11 p.m. and begin their cleanup and prep for the next day. A friend of Mark, Kirk Thompson, asked him to walk home with him after the shift was over, stating that the neighborhood wasn't good for black men at night, so they went in pairs. At around 11:45, midnight-ish, Kirk headed to the shop because Mark wasn't there. Near the same time, the couple who was out on the date noted that the lights were still on, but Jane's car was already gone from the shop. Kirk said that he went into the shop and stuck his head in and called out for Jane and Mark. But nobody answered, and something just inexplicable told him, "Don't go in." So he didn't. Meanwhile, the man on the date dropped his date off and went back to the shop, stating he routinely would go back and help everyone close up. When he arrived, the back door was open, so he entered and noted there was nobody there. In the office, the safe was wide open, prompting him to call the police. Turns out, $581 was stolen from the safe that night. Jim Kramer, the lead detective, said families were notified and nobody knew where the teens were. Immediately, and for some inexplicable reason, it was labeled as a kidnapping. Kirk said that his sister found out. She told Kirk, who returned to the burger shift and reported everything he saw that evening to the police. Since it was a kidnapping, police allowed burger shop employees to come in the morning and clean up and open the shop for the day, meaning the day crew went in, swept, mopped, and cleaned all of the surfaces of the tables and everything. That removed any fingerprints or latent evidence that would have remained. Later, retired police officer Buddy Elwinger would say, quote, "We screwed up from the beginning," end quote, realizing later in the day that they hadn't even bothered to take crime scene photos before allowing the store to be returned to a normal operational level. Meanwhile, Jane's car was found abandoned less than 2 blocks from the police station by a park at around 4:30 in the morning. The driver's side was locked, but the passenger's was not. It turns out that's typically how Jane rode. She always locked her driver's side. Crime scene specialists completed a search of the car and found nothing of evidentiary value. 36 hours later, Fred Heeger and his wife were walking down Road 37. This is approximately 20 miles away from the burger shaft when, unfortunately, they found all 4 teenagers. Danny David and Ruth Shelton were lying face down next to each other, almost side by side, and a short distance away was Jane and Mark. Upon autopsy review, 2 of them were shot, 1 was beaten, and 1 was stabbed, indicating to the police that multiple people were likely involved. Danny and Ruth were just off the embankment of a gravel road, and they were the 2 that had been shot. Jane was about 75 yards away, face down, stabbed twice in the heart, with the knife broken off at the hilt. Mark was beaten. He was the only one lying face up, and it was the blood that accumulated that essentially ended up drowning him. Still, they didn't find much more of evidentiary value there either, although they did find a set of tire tracks that police made a mold of, but they lacked anything for comparison. At 4:45 p.m., Johnson County Coroner Richard Tudor was on the scene and pronounced all four dead. In order to incentivize public help in this situation, a $25,000 reward ended up being created by the Burger Chef Corporation for information leading to the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in this crime. Steak and Shake, another local restaurant, put up an additional $1,000. A tip line was set up, and in 24 hours, over 100 calls were made. Then eventually, thousands of calls ended up coming in, leading to multiple theories of why the crime occurred. At one point, it was suggested that Mark owed drug dealers over $7,000. Of this, his best friend Kirk said that it was impossible for him to have been on drugs and Kirk not be aware of the situation. A man with a beard was identified as a suspicious character in the area at the time by multiple people. They saw him in his car in the area. One said the windows were fogged up at an odd time. A composite sketch was created from all this information that was given, and informants called in by the hundreds as well, to the point where an anonymous system was created where a 6-digit PIN was created and given after the report. They would get the 6-digit PIN, that way they could claim the reward if their information ended up coming to anything, while allowing anonymity in the moment. Letters started amassing as well, including those who had psychic visions of what had occurred, of course. Eventually, however, all leads dry up, and the tip line was shut off on December 5th. After a year passed without anyone being formally charged, on October 2nd, the Metropolitan Board of Police Commissioners met and voted to fire the police chief. Chief Robert L. Copeland was given the opportunity to resign rather than be let go. Still, he refused, and Board President Joseph Eek dismissed him for, quote, lack of leadership, end quote. For 7 years, until Alan Pruitt and James Freet got into a fight at a jail, the case was cold. Then Alan says he decided he had something to tell the police, saying that he and a friend had been drinking that night, heading to the Burger Chef, but thinking it was closed, so they went across the street to the Dunkin' Donuts. From his viewpoint there, he saw an orange van with Tim Willoughby and Jeff Reed in it. He saw Jeff drag out Mark and throw him in a van, and then Tim and Jane arguing outside. The next day, Alan sees Tim and Jeff with Tim's girlfriend, Marianne Higginbotham. Alan asked what the hell happened at the burger shop and what kind of beef could he happen to have with Jane. So the men asked, hey, you want to go for a ride and drink and smoke some joints? And Alan was okay with that. He got in, noting a nickel-plated .38 revolver in there. Marianne looked as though she had been crying and told Alan she thought they were going to kill her. The men stopped the van at the Devil's Backbone, which is a bridge in the area. They walked to the creek, and Marianne told Alan, run as fast as he can, because she thought that they were going to kill him. Alan turned and booked it, hearing a shot. Believing they were in fact trying to kill him, he did not turn around. He simply kept going. 7 months later, a teenage boy at the creek in Morrisville, Indiana, found a sealed barrel. He opened it out of curiosity and pulled out a skull. The body was later identified as Marianne Higginbotham. She had been shot in the head. The next time Alan met Jeff, Jeff pointed a gun at him and threatened him that he and his family were threatened multiple times, which is why he didn't come to police for a long time. Looking into it, it appeared that Jane may have been dealing for her older brother James, who was a known drug trafficker in the area. Police, however, have no record of the van being orange, and no van was ever found. So even with all this information, again, this case goes cold. 11 years later, Donald Forrester confesses that he saw Jane going to a house routinely and that she was known to have up to $15,000 for drugs on her. Donald was able to show police where each person was, that he shot 2 of them with a .38, that he flushed the casings down a toilet. This toilet and house were attached to a septic. The police went to the residence and happened to recover shell casings. But upon further inspection, they were .22s. Donald also said that he tied them up, but again, there was a lack of evidence to back up that claim, making his confession slowly disintegrate. Turns out, he was doing it to get a reduced sentence for solving the Burger Chef murders. And with that, the case went cold again. And that is unfortunately where it remains to this day. Now, to all those out there listening, remember, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.